next guest is Chris Bishop, who's running the election campaign for the National Party. Boy, he's going to be busy for the next wee while, as if he hasn't been already. He's going to need a rest, and he joins us now. Chris, welcome to the show. Lovely to have you on.
G'day, good to be here.
I was just thinking, I ran New Zealand First campaign in 1996, so I have some understanding of some of the pressures you're under. But one of the things you won't have to be worrying about is delinquent candidates, I assume.
Well, you never say never. As you know, Michael, running a campaign, it's a high-stress, high-stakes environment. But look, we've got actually a pretty great crop of candidates in the National Party this time around. We're very proud of them. They're doing an excellent job. And, they're all singing from the same song sheet, which is about getting the economy back on track and reducing the cost of living and rebuilding the economy.
Now, you and I also both know that running a campaign is also about dealing with mini crises, and they happen almost on a daily basis. Have you found that as well?
Yeah, we haven't been too bad so far. I mean, I'm not going to share any secrets about what's going on, but look, it's a stressful time. And what tends to happen in campaigns is once the media pack goes out on the trail with the leaders in particular, but also sort of senior spokespeople, then you're always on high alert, aren't you? Look, it's an interesting time of year. I think at the end of the day, though, when you cut through all the noise, most people fundamentally vote on the direction of the country, and if they've got confidence in the alternative government to take New Zealand in the right direction, and we're cautiously optimistic about what we're hearing and seeing so far.
Oh, that's right. I mean, campaigns are as much about the heat, but not as much about the light. You're right on that one. Are you staying at home, Chris, so you're back in Wellington coordinating everything from a central point? Yeah,
so our campaign office for the National Party is actually in Petone, in the Hutt, where I'm based. So my electorate is a marginal electorate of Hutt South, so fighting very hard for that seat. I was the MP there from 2017 to 20, very keen to win the seat back for National. Pretty traditionally Labour seat, but we swung it once before, so we're going to try and swing it again. Campaign office is actually here as well, so it's good to be able to do, sort of be based here during the week.
All right. Now, a couple of things. Obviously, I think it was one of the Stuff political reporters, Luke Malpass or somebody like that, made the commentary this morning that he thought that the campaign had got nasty and personal because the centre-left saw power slipping away from them and the centre-right saw it slipping towards them, and that made people even more antsy. Is that your reading of the situation?
Look, I think Labour are in a difficult position where they don't really have much of a record to defend. In fact, their record's pretty woeful. They've had 6 years of basically totemic failure across most public policy issues, and they don't really have much of a plan for the future. So Labour's sort of casting around looking for a strategy, and they've spent quite a bit of time basically copying the National Party. So, they sort of turned up and said, oh yeah, we're going to build a 6-lane tunnel under the harbour in Auckland. We're going to do all this stuff on law and order to try and give the appearance that we care about it. We're going to build all these roads. No one really believes them on that because they know that they've had 6 years of talking about light rail and they haven't delivered any of it. They've spent 6 years talking about Kiwi Rail and haven't done the 100,000 they promised and all of that. So they've got a real credibility problem when it comes to strategy. And so the only thing they've really got left is just kind of negativity. And regardless of what they say, I mean, the reality is the CTU attacks on Christopher Luxon are pretty personal, pretty negative. And I think, unfortunately, that's what the campaign is going to be like from Labour. They're just going to run a scare campaign about the National Party and what our policies are. And in particular, they're also going to spend quite a lot of time lying, frankly, about what our policies aren't. So, some of the stuff that they're saying is just unbelievably misleading. And so, the left likes to talk about misinformation and disinformation, and everyone's got very worked up about lies spreading on the internet. Well, frankly, the biggest source of misinformation at the moment is the Labour Party.
Now, I'm glad you raised the issue about negative campaigns because, listen, I ran a campaign in 96. You've run campaigns before, personal and now on a national basis. The reality is that you do need a mix of both. You've got to remind people of how bad the other side are, Chris, at the same time as reminding them how good you are. So negative campaigning has always been a feature of political elections, yeah?
Yeah, that's right, but it's the personal nature of some of the criticism of Chris Luxon that I think people have been pretty offended by. So as I said on Monday to most of the media, we're going to run a compare and contrast strategy. I mean, we are going to hold Labor to account for their record, and we are going to make sure people know about the failures. I mean, people remember the 2017 campaign. They remember the aspirational rhetoric, the promises, the hopes and dreams and all that. And they also know that 6 years later we're in recession, the cost of living is really biting, mortgage rates are out of control, and many of the promises Labor promised in 2017 have not been delivered. So we're definitely going to remind people about that and remind people about our plan for the future. And so I just think of it as compare and contrast. You talk about what Labor said they'd do and what they haven't done, and you talk about what National's going to do, and at the end of the day, the public will make up their minds.
Okay. Now, I just introduced today's show by looking at the latest Roy Morgan poll, which I'm sure you'd be aware of as well, that was published yesterday, I think, and made the comment that I'm not aware of any time since probably the formation of the National Party, what's that, it goes back to 1936, that an election, a general election, has been held with both National and Labour's collective vote being as low as it is at the moment, and third parties doing as well. What do you put that down to, Chris?
Look, I think, well, I mean, the first point is the Roy Morgan, we're not placing a lot of faith and store in that. It's sort of wildly out of whack with most of the other stuff that's floating around. But there's no doubt that the National and Labor are fighting hard for that centrist vote. I think the Labor Party's got real problems in the sense that their vote is being fractured from both left and right. You've got a lot of Labor voters peeling off to us and to some extent New Zealand First, which has ticked up a bit, but they're also losing votes to their left as well. And I think this goes back to the point I made before, which is Labor don't really know what their core proposition is at this election. They can't run on their record. They can't really run on their future plans because they don't really have any. All they've really got is negativity about the National Party and Christopher Luxon in particular. So I think people are a bit disenfranchised and a bit disillusioned with Labor.
The reason I asked that question, it wasn't to be critical of National or Labor, really. It was just that I was wondering if the New Zealand political landscape's getting quite polar or polarised. It's starting to now head to the left and head to the right and sort of all points in between. And as you say, National and Labor tend to head more towards the centre. Is it more of a commentary on New Zealand politics and society at the moment that we're becoming quite fractured?
I think to some extent. I think there is a degree of polarisation, and this government's been very divisive. I mean, they've set landlords against renters and farmers against urban folk, Maori against non-Maori. They've been a very divisive government, and so I think that reflects that to some extent. But look, these things go in cycles a bit. I mean, you'd remember 1996 and 99. New Zealand First has sort of risen and fallen, as you know, in those days. Michael, 96 in particular. And National and Labor, went to very, real lows back in 96, obviously. And then things sort of, came back a bit into the 05 and 08. National's vote went up to, 46, 47% of the vote. Even ate up all the votes on the right back then. And Labor's had periods of real highs, I mean, most notably in the last election. So these things do go up and down a bit. And look, MMP, we have a multi-party system, people have their chance to vote for, parties on the fringe, on the left and the right, through Greens and ACT, and also the Maori Party as well, which has its own distinct kind of identity. So I think that to some extent there's a degree of polarisation, and I think the divisive nature of the government has accentuated that in the last 3 years. And Christopher Luxon wants to run a very inclusive administration as Prime Minister. He wants to be a uniter, not a divider.
Well, good luck on that, because uniting some of those diverse strands is going to take, I would have all those thoughts, supernatural powers.